Bushido Blade's a unique take on traditional 3D fighting. Much like Soul Calibur, it's a sword-styled fighting game. However, instead of slashing and kicking your opponent till they're KO'd, the goal is to deliver a fatal blow to your opponent. This is done by striking them around the torso or the head at a certain range. In order to do this, though, you have to strike the opponent when they're open, so paying attention to their stance and how open they are from an attack is the key. Now, this seems a little weird, and you may think, oh man, that's not fair at all. This is actually one of the most unique and fun takes on 3D fighting I've ever had the experience of playing. The main game mode of this game would be Story Mode, which pits whatever fighter you choose with whatever weapon you choose against all the other selectable characters, and then a few boss-like characters who don't use the traditional weapon set. The game mode is fun, it has a story, but it's not necessarily a huge part of the game, but it's still cool nonetheless. Now, this can be played with normal or hard difficulty. Normal difficulty is very good for beginners, so you can familiarize yourself, but hard difficulty actually puts you in a much more challenging state. You'll have enemies that will read your stances a lot better and deflect your attacks a lot more. There's also a neat mode called Slash Mode, which basically puts you in a hallway against various numbers of other ninja-like enemies, and the goal is to take out as many as you can. Now, this is fun, and it's relatively simple up until you start getting into higher digits, where enemies start becoming more powerful. And once you have, you know, 1 or 2 strikes to your body, and then there's also POV mode, which is basically a first-person style mode, where you take the fighting into the eyes of whoever you pick. Now, this is probably the closest you'll ever have to a real Bushido sword fight without risking your real life. Now, this isn't necessarily what I'd call a selling point of Bushido Blade, but it's definitely a unique thing to try. There's also practice mode, which pits you against your opponent and just has you striking them as many times as you want. It's I guess, good for free sparring against certain characters or weapon types. Now, when it comes to actual gameplay, you have to be aware of what your stances leave you open for, what attacks each one gives you, and knowledge of this is how you'll be able to take out your opponent. Story mode. Because in story mode, if you dishonor the Bushido code by doing things such as being a coward or not being able to kill your opponent quick enough, or throwing dirt in their face, you'll actually have to restart the entire mode. This even accounts for the guy who's using a gun. In terms of visuals, the game is presented quite nicely, especially for the time it was made. It's a very nice looking PlayStation game. The levels are well designed and set a really neat atmosphere. The character models look pretty decent themselves. The sound in the game is pretty nice too. Music fits a very nice Bushido style feel, as well as some intense combat feel. All the level tracks and such fit the game very nicely. All in all, Bushido Blade is a very unique game. One of my favorite fighting games to this day, and probably my favorite PlayStation 1 fighting game. It's always nice to see something completely unique and original in a traditional style. What might be the best part about Bushido Blade is really it can be anyone's game. You can go back and forth between winning and losing with somebody. It's a very balanced fighting game. Oh no, if you like 3D games and you like something unique and original, Bushido Blade is definitely worth a shot. It's one of my favorite fighting games for the PlayStation 1. Actually, it's one of my favorite fighting games, period. I love Bushido Blade for its uniquity. And honestly, more games should have been like this.